In a universe where life does not end at death, we explore the infinite possibilities forged by our very minds. Welcome to Arthadian Anthologies. Greetings, fellow travelers and storytellers. Welcome to the Arthadian Anthologies podcast, where I, Matthew Arthur, explain to you the ever-expanding universe I've developed and the deeper meaning behind it all. We are reaching the climax of this first season. A few more entries, and then I will be taking a break from the podcast to focus solely on the Reborn in Power Kickstarter campaign. But until then, I will be focused on bringing you information that is needed in order to properly assimilate into the cultures of the pillars as you become reborn as your first chosen. In this entry, we will be expanding on the core cycle so you have a better grasp on how time works while in exploring the realms. So without further ado, let's dive in. When devising a calendar for not just one planet, but multiple, it took some time to figure out how it would work. From a highly speculative standpoint, a core cycle is not what you would call accurate in its depiction of telling time. However, this is technically a science fantasy setting, so I hope you will allow me to stretch the scope of what it means to be accurate in regards to telling time. First, I would like to begin with explaining where this calendar originates. There are two places you may have learned about the creator of this calendar. One of those is from this podcast, in entry 12 regarding the Dark Void. Or you may have read it in the Core Realms Codex entry on arthadiananthologies.com. In fact, there you will be able to find specified scans that detail how core cycles work. Some of those details will be further explained here. Now where we begin is with Grand Sage Illumin. Known as a pure Photonic sage, he was born on the harbor as a Tonist around 50 years before Convergence. His knowledge of Photonic was unparalleled, and he predicted the alignment of the realms that came after Convergence. Once the core finally formed, he began working on his calendar as a way to help people navigate the new locations they may come across. After around 30 cycles, Illumin figured out the path in which the realms dance around each other, all beginning when the nebulae of the cosmos shine their brightest. Illumin felt as though the regal entities were communing with him through this astrological pattern they were displaying. With the nebulae beginning this pattern, Illumin coined the term nebulaic convergence as a testament to the massive Draco Nebula and it being the first sight seen as soon as the convergence occurred. Over the next 5 cycles, which is approximately 10 years in Earth standard, Illumin discovered that the nebulae returned to a visual standpoint around 5 times. Calculating the time between each of these standpoints, he was able to formulate a timeline between each moment Draco left and returned. That time was rounded up to around 720 days, or as Illumin put it, marks on a calendar. Once determining this, he sought to examine the realms in their entirety, exploring them from the confines of a research vessel gliding through the cosmos. From his research, Illumin was able to gather when the realms were furthest from each other, and over the course of his journeys, he mapped out the entirety of the core. Once returning home, he came to find the harbor had grown as refugees began merging with the cultural establishments found on his world. Illumin spent the rest of his days detailing out what I am about to present to you. In a core cycle, there are 5 arrays which detail the positioning of the realms from each other. Each array has 144 marks inside it, which is expanded into 6 months, each with 24 days, or marks, whatever floats your boat, but for this, we'll stick to marks. The first array is obviously known as Convergence. This is when most planets throughout the realms have a visual during their nights when the nebulae are at their zenith. Some worlds get a larger view of them, some worlds only just a little blip. But when using a powerful telescope, you will be able to see the convergence. The second array is known as Divergence. I'm sure you can make sense of this one. As the nebulae disappear from view, the realms all disperse, reaching a point where they have diverged far from each other, hence divergence. Array 3 is known as parallel, when the realms have found themselves side by side in their dance together. This is when the cosmic tunnels open up in the outer membrane of the core, allowing for interstellar travel through each realm to the nebulae. Array 4 is one that you may be familiar with, as it is the submergence array. This is when the void begins to drown out light from the stars spread amongst the cosmic realm. Be wary when traveling through space during this array. Lastly is the equileo array, or Array 5. During this period, the realms expand further with societies on pillars and colonies participating in their annual elections. It wouldn't be an ever-expanding universe without a period of expanse. At each array, as I stated before, there are 6 months that consist of 24 marks each, or 4 weeks. These months were devised before they were given meaning by the inhabitants of the pillars. Now they are the periods of time to take action during the array, for the pillars of the core, and beyond. The first month of every array is the month of Ryov, also known as the month of growth. The Harbor Societies celebrate new arrays by hosting festivities for all cultures found throughout the pillars. There are a few capital environments, however, that do not share this enthusiasm. The second month is Einzo, or the month of creation. Vicronix has taken the time to focus on technological advancement in order to further the development of the realms as a whole. During this month, scientists are working their hardest to establish a name for themselves. Onok is the third month, being the month of exploration. The nest begins their migration patterns and sends out travelers on expeditions. This is also when the core seeks out new worlds to call command colonies. The fourth month is the month of compassion, called Apilla. Moriat sends out Redicon warriors to distant worlds in order to colonize as well as to find others of their kind. There have been few sightings of other trees of life spread throughout the realm of Evemore. The month of Ceres, or the month of prayer, is the 5th month of the Agerosh Illumin. This is when the Arcus Academy begins its enrollment, and the many inhabitants of the pillars practice whatever faith they deem worthy to them. And lastly is the month of grace, better known as Zeril. This is when all societies throughout the pillars and colonies elect or designate any officials to the Sidorian Senate on the harbor. This is also when the past and future leaders are commemorated for their efforts to further develop their societies. The last thing Illumin sought to focus on was the rebirth process found throughout the realms. Being a Votonic sage, rebirth is a phenomenon that is highly revered by many in the realm of power. Therefore, each mark represents a stage in rebirth, with 6 stages in total. The first day of each week is Vomark. In Votanian, the language has a formal and informal dialect. When speaking formally, one needs to begin every sentence with Vo, as it means beginning or emergence. In the rebirth process, Vo signifies birth, the start of a new life. Avmark is the second day of the week. The term Av stems from the word Avilia, which in Votanian means innocence. This being after birth, we all go through a stage of innocence. Once Avmark has finished, the next mark in this weekly cycle is Timark. This is the growth phase, as Ti means to grow, to enlarge, to expand. This mark tends to be the busiest out of the week, as many businesses and corporations focus their efforts on growing. Reaching the second half of the week is usually when people don't like thinking about the rebirth process. On the 4th mark, it is referred to as being doubtful on the progress one has made. Lo stems from the Votanian word lokasa, which means to place doubt. It's only natural for us to doubt ourselves, but most don't like to acknowledge our shortcomings. Evmark is the 5th in the week, and is usually the mark where people have funerals. Ev means loss in Votanian. Whenever you have lost anything, Ev comes at the start of your sentence. In fact, it is said that the core reset occurred on Evmark. And finally, Kai means to fall, to die, stemming from Votanian, Kaitel, which means death process. This is the final mark of the week, and the final phase of the rebirth process. In the end, whatever happens after determines the course of an individual's life. But when referring to the Agerosh Illumin, the week begins anew and the process continues, signifying that death is not the end, showing the people of the core that life does not end at death. I thank you for listening to this entry. With the core cycle detailed and the Agerosh Illumin, illuminated, I can go into the core reset for you next week. The reset has been referenced numerous times in the codex entries found at arthadiananthologies.com and is detailed even more so in the chosen codex. For next week, I wish to focus on certain beliefs and conspiracies as to what those living in the core believe to have happened before the reset. Once again, if you'd like to support me, you could donate to my Subscribestar account, Reborn in Power, or check out my website at arthadiananthologies.com. I will be posting this podcast up on Subscribestar and the website, so keep a watchful eye. Until then, be safe, stay safe, and if death comes to you, may you be reborn in power.